Welcome to another Trump deck teachings. This time with a, as of the recording of this video, very unpopular class, Priest. It was so unpopular that, full disclaimer, I had to actually think quite a while before deciding which Priest deck to showcase. Priests are currently not too popular because they are not too successful, and I did not find that great of success using this deck, even though I tried it out for some time. However, this deck doesn't suck, and we'll show how at least one Priest deck can be used to mild success. I actually did a free-to-play run to Legend with a Dragon Priest, and this Dragon Priest deck has gotten new tricks because it adds N'Zoth in. And along with N'Zoth, you can get some tremendous value with the new cards of Shifting Shade, which is not in this deck. But you get Shifting Shade a lot with Museum Curator. This is a deck that's kind of plays with a mid-range style. It wants to actively play cards, which is one of the reasons why Priest as a whole is weak. They have a lot of responsive cards, and if they don't draw the correct answers, then they get run over. With this deck, you can put out threats assertively sometimes. You can lead off with strong curves like Twilight Whelp, 1 mana 2/3, Wormrest Agent, 2 mana 2/4, Black Wing Technician, 3 mana 3/5, Twilight Guardian, 4 mana 3/6. Unlike more control priests, more heavily controlled priests, which might run Excavated Evil and might have cut the Northshire Cleric, this deck runs the Northshire Cleric and the Holy Nova. There's still some chance of getting some tremendous draws with it because it actually has minions with high amounts of health, which you can heal. The entire reason why you run dragons really is one, to play assertive strong cards such as Wormrest Agent. Priests need an early game play, arguably, and Twilight Whelp, as well as the powerful Blackwing Corruptor on 5. N'Zoth in this deck hits Chill Maul, Sylvanas, and Cairn, but not just that, but also the 2 Death Rattle cards served up by Museum Curator. The Entomb is very strong against control decks, and this deck is very strong against the N'Zoth decks out there. You just entomb their Death Rattle cards, and then you can actually revive them with N'Zoth as well. An interesting take on Priest, which is a control style as well, featuring a lot of heavy cards, but also has early game to survive.
I must protect the one. The light shall bring victory.
The main reason why I switched away from this deck is because it is possible that N'Zoth Paladin simply outclasses the deck. This deck does a few things better than N'Zoth Paladin. It has a very good situational clear for certain things with Shadow Word Pain and with Shadow Word Death. If you can get a good target with these, you usually get a lot of tempo. N'Zoth Paladin has a similar problem of not having early game plays. This deck fixes it with cards like Twilight Whelp and Wormrest Agent. But where you're missing some unfairness is the lack of the big heal of Forgotten Healing, the very powerful nature of Tyrian Fordring, the 20 heal of Forbidden Healing, but you get Entomb. And you have a 1 mana more Consecration with Holy Nova. You can't Equality to clear the board, but you have minions that you can play on curve. So those are kind of the pros and cons as we generally play cost-efficient minions.
The land serves me.
It's good enough to Shadow Word Pain. One of the weaknesses of Priest, and this is a very big weakness, is that their hero power sometimes does nothing, and sometimes does a lot. Unlike the Warrior, they can't overheal. If their minions are full, they can't heal those either. And it's rough being a Priest. Saving the Whelp in my hand because there's no dragon, of course. Having 1 dragon in your hand is very useful to activate the dragon synergy. Sometimes with this deck, you have not much to do, but to kind of pass early. And that's also another weakness of Priest. This is kind of becoming a Trump teachings. Why are you playing Priest? But hey, this is why you play Priest, as an example. So that can be Entombed or Shadow Word Death. Because there's nothing to play Shadow Word Death with, I will spend the higher amount of mana and Entomb.
Spectacular.
Wow.
That's pretty fantastic, a Yasharaj ramp. The opponent does not have that many cards for Emperor Thorson, so it's not an immediate need to remove that from the board, even though I can with Shadow Word Death. It is important to also be able to play some of these very expensive cards. Of which I think I'm going to do overplay the Shadow Word Death in a tough decision. Because Shadow Word Deathing this leads to this thing just hitting me again, and then I play this, and this thing hits me again. And it just becomes a bit too slow. So I have to play a slow card while things are not that bad. It's a good Shadow Word Death target. And I suppose I can clear one of those. Oh, I'm just dead. Just priest
Well
things.
played. You have best.
Your soul shall be mine.
The light shall bring victory.
One of the things that you have to think about quite often with priest is whether or not to keep Northshire Cleric in your hand. If that opponent is Zoo, for example, they play Flame Imp on turn 1, you play Northshire Cleric, and then they simply kill your Northshire Cleric for free. Furthermore, if they are Zoo, and they don't play Flame Imp on turn 1, and instead they play something like a Possessed Villager or a Argent Squire, they can simply use Abusive Sergeant and also still kill your Northshire Cleric. So often it ends up being that you want to save the Northshire Cleric for the late game. So this is one of the cards that you actually want to mulligan against most classes. Maybe not Hunter or Shaman. Maybe. But maybe even then, because they have Totem Golem and then maybe just Hunter. But they have 3/2s as well. Anyways, Museum Curator is kept. One of the best starts you can get with this deck, I guess I should say, is you start off with Twilight Whelp. They play a 3/2 on turn 1, or 2/2, and then you Power Word Shield your Twilight Whelp, and then you get the free trade, and that's incredibly good when everything lines up like that. This would be a good play, but I have no dragon right now, so I guess I'll play that one. Against this aggressive fast start, there's no way I can hold off until Sylvanas, so I'll keep the Shifting Shade. Shifting Shade comes up a lot, which is why it's not in this deck. To smooth out the curves, instead of just including Shifting Shade, Museum Creator often gets Shifting Shade, but sometimes can get some really big cards if you're up against control decks. And against aggressive decks, you can start off with some lower cost cards, such as Harvest Golem. That was an unusual trade by him, using the 2/1. Very good for me. If he had used the 3/2, it would have been worse for me. He perhaps fears Pyromancer, which this deck doesn't run, but some of the control decks do run Wild Pyromancer. So this deck is a very kind of strange hybrid where you want to play on curve, and you can play on curve often due to the inclusion of several early game minions, while also being control and reactive deck. Sometimes beautiful answers arrive, like Shadow Word Pain. Priest, one of the few classes that could have dealt with that situation right there.
Welcome to the exhibit.
A 5-drop. Looks good. This is a little bit unfortunate for this deck. It didn't get the start that it had hoped to, of course. Without a dragon and without whelps and without Blackwing Technician. And in a situation like that, Excavated Evil, of course, is better. However, there are an amount of times where you do lead off with minions with high amounts of health, and Holy Nova might be a better card in this deck because it will also heal. That was a very spirited play by the opponent. Feels Priest, man. Priests do not have a way to deal 1 damage, often. The only way you can actually push damage in this deck are Holy Nova and Blackwing Corruptor. But at least I have this 2/4 taunt, so that's good. I can even buff the Wormrust Agent out of range of just the Leroy.
Are you mocking me?
So that he has to use some kind of buff on it. Could have played Northshire Cleric instead of healing myself there, but I want to combine the Northshire with the Holy Nova someday. Perhaps that's a little too ambitious, though. Perhaps it's more of the 1/3 didn't seem like it would accomplish much. Yeah, that explains why he played the Leroy. He had a hand of Doomguard, Forbidden Ritual, Leroy.
I have no time for games.
I have to play a slow play, but fortunately, I suppose the health is high enough. Even worse, a hand of Power Overwhelming, Leroy, Doomguard, Forbidden Ritual. 2 Forbidden Rituals. The one saving grace of Priest is sometimes they can do some truly insane things when the stars align. Northshire Cleric Holy Nova, and then you can draw 4 cards. Oh, the trade wants to happen. Oh no. Draw fewer cards if I trade first, though. So I guess I'll take the 2 cards, but I won't be able to steal anything. Oh no, I can heal that and then steal that, of course. I would overdraw, which means I shouldn't have played the Northshire. Holy Nova and then heal that and then trade into that was the right play. So that's how the Priest can win against a really bad zoo hand? Though this hand was also weak. I mean, the basic concept though remains the same. You play your 1-drop, your 2-drop, your 3-drop, your 4-drop. You try to hold board control, and then you can use your hero power to good effect. Even though that game may have looked weak on both counts, the deck tracker is providing the score, and I have gone 13-12 with it, so it's solid, but I feel like it might get outclassed by N'Zoth Paladin. Did we just cut the entire deck teaching? I don't know, man. It was so bad, but I've started to feel the despair for Priest as well. I just can't see any saving grace of this deck now that I've played a lot of N'Zoth Paladin. It's like it's strictly worse N'Zoth Paladin. It's not strictly worse. It's mostly worse. Wait, I should look at my spreadsheet and see between the 2 decks, like where does Priest even have an advantage? So it's weaker against Druid, it's weaker against Hunter, it's weaker against Freeze Mage, it's arguably better against Tempo Mage, it's arguably better when the Priest N'Zoth deck goes against the Paladin N'Zoth deck, but I'm not even sure about that. It's weaker against Rogue, it's weaker against Shaman, it's weaker against Reno Lock, It's weaker against Zoo. It's weaker against Warrior. Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.